A former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago was quoted as saying, "Politics has a morality of its own," and I think our politicians are proving him right. This past week has seen some increase in our political intrigue and in our political activities with, well, I think the lawsuit, the pre-action protocol letter that was sent from our Prime Minister to one of the senators, one of the opposition senators. I believe that that letter was sent since the week before. It's just, it really broke news this week. The letter started off because this senator went online on Facebook and allowed himself to say some things. I'm going to attempt to read through some of the pre-action protocol letter, and in the pre-action protocol letter, what he's accusing Dr. Rowley of, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. They repeat what he said. I am sure on YouTube here, I may not be able to repeat everything he said. If I repeat everything he said, my video on YouTube may be removed. Imagine that. And that's a senator of our country in making an accusation against the Prime Minister. And in our political class, there are lots of lawsuits. Usually around election time, the lawsuits for slander and for libel, etc. increase greatly. And Dr. Rowley isn't new to it. I believe last election he won a lawsuit based on a similar issue. And I hope Mr. Knackett has his court closed. In fact, he says he does have his court closed and he's looking forward to meeting Dr. Rowley in court. And even after that bit of interaction, there was another bit where the opposition leader released another one of her now notorious press releases. These press releases are getting more and more strange. Personally, I have a conspiracy theory when it comes to these press releases. When we reach her press release, we'll talk about that. And then to cap all of this off, the PNM, the ruling government, couldn't have allowed that press release to stand by itself. So they had to come with a comeback. They had to have a counterpoint to make to that press release. So they released their own, and we'd go through that. They brought out their thesaurus to make sure that they had enough large words in there to really impress the population and the citizens. Personally, I don't think much of our population is impressed by this. Truthfully, if too much of our population is impressed by this amount of political gamesmanship, then I would be unimpressed by our population. So let's just take in a little bit of what Senator David Knackett said about our Prime Minister, and let's see if you think this is becoming of people who want to put themselves in positions of leadership in our country. On the day of this is the letter from Dr. Rowley's lawyers that he sent to Mr. Knackett. On the 14th day of June 2021 at 7:53 a.m., you uploaded to Facebook a video recording on the Facebook page Senator David Knackett. In the video recording, you uttered the following words. Prime Minister Keith Rowley, no seditious dog whistling here. This is to tell you that you and your... Listen, he went on to accuse the Prime Minister of being a criminal. And I'm not a lawyer, but I think that accusation needs some evidence. You cannot go around accusing people of being criminals. A criminal isn't just a matter of opinion. A criminal is somebody who is convicted of a crime. And as far as I am aware, Dr. Rowley hasn't been convicted of a crime. So that line alone, where he accuses the man of being a criminal, that line alone could bring him into some trouble. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't be sure of that, but I think that line may be a bit difficult to defend in court. So you may say that, okay, Dr. Rowley did this, and I presume he may have done this, and I assume he may have done this, and I've heard he has done that, but can you prove it? And that's really the matter in court. Can you prove it? Can you prove that he's a criminal like you accuse? You've been caught lying over and over again because you and the PNM try to monetize this COVID-19 at the expense of our citizens. Over 600 dead and counting, and all you look for are distractions. No, not at all. No one believes you anymore. No one is calling for an insurrection, but your actions and your actions of your government will bring about civil unrest, and that's a fact. It has already brought our country to the brink of abject poverty. Now, that where he accuses the Prime Minister of lying again and again, that is a lie. Trinidad and Tobago is not on the brink of abject poverty. Now, anyone who follows my videos would be very much aware that I am not really in full support of the lockdown, at least in the full extent that we have it currently. And I am suspicious of the government's authority to lock people down in their homes and forbid them from working. That is a suspect amount of authority and power in a government. So that's my view on it. But even with that being my view, I can still be honest and look outside and see that Trinidad is not on the brink of abject poverty. A while back I did a contemplation talking about the difficulties during the lockdown periods, and I separated a lot of people into Trinidad into two different categories. During this pandemic, there's one category of people that are gaining weight and there's one category of people that are losing weight. And truth be told, the category of people that are gaining weight in Trinidad, I think, is much higher than the category of people that are losing weight. So yes, there are some difficulties around. Yes, we have questions about the legitimacy of the lockdowns and how long we can manage to keep them up. But to make the statement that Trinidad is currently on the brink of abject poverty is a lie. And that amount of exaggeration makes the entire statement you make seem less sensible, because someone attempting to read it with a neutral mind, with a level head, would be reading it and seeing that what you are saying isn't lining up with the truth and fact of the matter. But the next line that he wrote or he said is the real kicker that offended a lot of people. I'm not sure if this is something that can be read clearly on YouTube. He called Dr. Rowley a house Negro. I hope that's not an offensive word on YouTube's policy. I know for some it's an offensive word. Really and truly in Trinidad, if you are familiar with Trinidadian culture, that isn't an offensive word. It's kind of more the default term in Trinidad, but not the house side, just the second part in that phrase. The house part added to it is an insult wherever you said it. And attempting to call Dr. Rowley this is aiming it at an insult. And it's not the first time that that insult was launched at him. The insult of him being an house African because of the PNM's links to some of the Syrians and the what the UNC likes to call the 1%. Again, linking to another video I did, UNC in Trinidad takes the position of being closer to the populist side. They attempt to appeal to a populist leading. Now, it's understandable why, because the populist, the idea of populism is you're appealing to the wider general population, to the common man, against the elites, against the establishment, against the administration. And now in the context of Trinidad and Tobago, you don't get much more of establishment than PNM. PNM is the literal establishment when it comes to politics in Trinidad and Tobago. Since our independence, PNM has been the ruling party for the majority of our time. So PNM is the establishment, and UNC, being formed out of the labor movement, has come about being attempting to be more of the populist side. Now that has to be taken with a pinch of salt, as with nearly any populist. When you watch their wealth and what they say, they are very much just as much a part of the 1% as the people they accuse of it. So there's some hypocrisy in that accusation. But that's the idea behind that whole labeling of Dr. Rowley as being a house pet, as it were, for that 1% class. Senator Knackett went on to make several accusations in that video, but he responded to this pre-action protocol letter. Knackett and pre-action letter. Bring it on, Rowley. So Senator Knackett, in his response, he said that he is confident that he can back up his claims. And I would really be interested in seeing this. It is set to happen 14 days after the letter was sent. I believe the letter was sent somewhere around June 23rd or somewhere around that time. So I anticipate the 14-day wait period after that letter has been sent, because I'd like to see Senator Knackett back up these accusations. He is not backing down. He says that his accusations are with merit and that he came with the intention of serving this country with all he has in his power and with all the assets at his reach, and he is going to do such, and he will see Dr. Rowley in court. That would make for an interesting court case. We'll be following up on that. But of course, the opposition leader cannot be outshone by her subordinates, by those under her. So she had to release her own press release, and the press release followed suit. If you're following my videos, if you are a loyal viewer, don't forget to click that like button right now, and don't forget to drop a comment also if you have something to say. I keep saying drop a comment, and I see few comments, so I guess that what I say cover most of what most people want to say too. So I guess the comment, if anyone has to comment, maybe agreed, full stop. So that's understandable. I mean, if you have nothing to comment, you have nothing to comment. But the opposition leader seems to always have a lot to comment. And apparently, on her subject line, she likes putting a lot of these comments. When I read that previous press release, the subject line was 2 paragraphs. This new press release, the subject line again seems to be 2 paragraphs. Can someone supply her with a proper press release writer? Please, just the structure of it. So let's read what our opposition leader has to say to the press. Now, if she's sending this out to the press, it's because she wants all of us, the citizens, to hear it. And this is someone who has the intention, at least from her present political path, she has the intention of wanting to get back into a position of leading our country. So let's see what this intended leader has to say to us. Opposition leader, I'm going to read the subject line, and I'm going to attempt to read the subject line in one breath, the way a subject is meant to be read. So we're reading the subject line here. Opposition leader, vaccine vagrant Keith Rowley continues to operate like a conman who keeps telling you next week you'll get something done. Today, an unkempt and grubby looking Keith Rowley has again shown himself to be willing to say anything to distract from the fact that he and his failed medical team have no plan to take us out of this crisis. I again call on the government to let all citizens get back to work so they can earn an income to feed their families. The country and our citizens cannot go on suffering this way. Now, that was just the subject. I didn't successfully read it in one breath. Personally, this subject, except for the introduction with the vaccine vagrant part, if we exclude the vaccine vagrant piece, just from Keith Rowley to go on suffering this way is a sensible enough press release for an opposition leader. You get in your insults there, you get in saying that you want the place to reopen, we get the general idea of it. There isn't really need to say anymore, especially when you have such a full-bodied subject line, but there's more to be said. Let's read and see what was written. Today, an unkempt and grubby-looking Keith Rowley has again shown himself to be willing to say anything to distract from the fact that he and his failed medical team have no plan to take us out of this crisis. The data the propaganda team produced, however, definitively shows that the failed mass vaccination attempt from the government's disastrous con game on the 6th of June panned out exactly as we had warned, sadly. The largest spike we have ever had in the country occurred precisely 14 days later. The failed health team bears responsibility for these deaths. Now, is that true? I thought I was at least paying slight attention to the statistics and how our COVID numbers are going. And our largest spike was 14 days after the 6th. 6 plus 14 is 20. So the 20th of June had our largest spike. Is that true? Can someone go back and check that for me? I'm not feeling to go looking for that now, but I suspect that isn't exactly true. And that's the general tone of the press release. Ultimately, it comes down to calling on Dr. Rowley to reopen all sectors of the economy and allow everyone to get back to work. Really and truly, I'm not sure exactly how making sure everyone goes back to work could be sensibly linked with attempting to say that COVID is being handled horribly and it is running rampant in the country. Because if it is running rampant in the country, a call to send everyone flippantly back to work isn't really a good idea, is it? But speaking about not good ideas, the People's National Movement, the PNM, the ruling government, the party that is in power, their women's arm, found that the release by our venerable opposition leader wasn't a good one, so they had to reply to it and point out exactly where they had the problems with it. Now, if you are not familiar with politics in Trinidad and Tobago, the opposition leader in Trinidad and Tobago, Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissessar, Silk Senior Counsel Lawyer, She was once Prime Minister, and when she was Prime Minister, even into her time as opposition, there have been numerous accusations about her being inebriated, about her love or reliance on alcoholic substances. So that is a going accusation that there may be some evidence that makes it less than just an accusation, but you'd see the picture I'm painting when I read the PNM Women's League release. But on the note again of the opposition's release, again with that release, as I said with the previous release, if you listen to that video, I find the language used does not sound like the general style of Kamala Prasad Bisesa. That's my conspiracy. My conspiracy is that it is not the opposition leader that writes these press releases. I suspect that she may not even know much about the press releases. She may not even proofread them. That's just my theory. I have no evidence of it. There's no way of me knowing this or proving it, but that's just what I suspect. I suspect she doesn't write them. I suspect she doesn't read them. I suspect it's a younger member in the UNC. On Twitter, I saw some accusations and some names floated up, and I think that bears some truth to it. Very likely it may be a younger, loyal Kamala member of the UNC that is actually writing these press releases. If I was Kamala, I'd fire that person because they aren't doing you any good. But moving on to the People's National Movement, their Women's League, in their media release, they showed us how to write that subject line. Their subject line was one word: lickspittle. The definition of lickspittle is a fawning subordinate or toady. At first, the National Women's League of the People's National Movement didn't want to deign the slovenly, slatternly style of the opposition leader's latest press release with any attention. Now, as you would see as we read through this press release, you may need to pull out your dictionary and your thesaurus to get a real understanding of it. Someone who wrote this waxed poetic, and they really wanted to show that their command of the English language was a wide one. So, however, given the disgusting, clearly unfocused, inebriated diatribe, we felt that out of motherly concern, we need to point Mr. Megu and the opposition leader, who seems to be becoming more demented, in the right direction. The League wishes that both the scribe and the opposition leader get the help they clearly need urgently. The League also wishes to advise Mr. Megu that whilst being a lickspittle may be difficult for any man with even a modicum of intellect, the League believes, based on his mundane missives, clearly he is qualified to perform his crass, crude position with gusto. Although we are aware he is a known underperformer, especially in certain areas. Wow. 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 This press release, this media release, is hitting under the belt, in the most literal sense of the term. The National Women's League asks that Mr. Megu stop using his reflection and that of his paymaster to describe others. Such self-loathing is unhealthy, and the League wishes them both salvation from their personal demons. End. Listen, that wasn't bad literature. It wasn't bad writing, but I think it was bad for the country. We do not want a tit-for-tat go back and forth between our opposition and our government. That doesn't benefit us. As entertaining as it may be, the entertainment doesn't lead to good governance. Listen, I was entertained. I smiled. If you were watching me while I read this, I smiled. I even smiled while I read the opposition press release. I am a jovial guy. I see the humor in it. If these were just people in the savannah somewhere, if this was just us liming in a bar and this was just old talk throwing between two former friends, then this would be grand. We would all be having an enjoyable time. It would be entertaining. We would be laughing and probably bouncing some glasses. And oh, she called her lickspittle and she called this one demented and this one is being knocked on his bedroom performance. What is that? That is a bar level discourse. That is a discourse not expected from the elevated levels of our ruling classes. But I think what may be the problem is that a lot of us may view some of the ruling class in too elevated of a level, and we may be expecting too much of them. Personally, my expectations keep dropping lower and lower with each press release. Comment and tell me exactly what you think. If you haven't liked the video, don't forget to click that like button. And I'll see you tomorrow for the next video. Rising with the time.